Hello, everybody. We're going to get started in a minute. Just waiting for my co-host. Monday night, September 14th. There's my co-host.
Hey, how are you? I'm at someone's house having dinner, so you might hear noise in the background.
Oh, what do you have? Maybe I'll stop by.
Yeah, come on up. I'm out on Long Island.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. So we got a big dud today. Pretty much what we
Yeah, we
expected.
sure did. Although a couple of things held up really nicely, notably Facebook and Apple.
Apple was the big green one on my screen today, but even though it closed lower from the open, it did hold, and a lot of stocks did not.
Right, exactly. And Facebook held up where it needed to hold, up at the 92, up at.
Yep. Actually, take a quick look at the market. We'll give it a little bit of context for everybody. So you can see here, basically, right out of the gate, the market tested the previous day's high and just gave it up immediately. And interestingly, we actually did make a retest of the lows, and you would have thought that would have led to another push lower in the afternoon, but there just wasn't enough volume. Marion, we had been mentioning earlier in the day, I think it was probably close to 11 o'clock, where there was maybe 17 million to 20 million, something along those.
Right.
That line is in shares traded in the SPY, and we ended the day, according to these numbers now, at around 4:30 in the afternoon, shy of 70 million. Which, for those of you who don't know, to put it in context, that is half of what it did on Friday.
Right, exactly. We can typically do that by 11 o'clock in the morning.
Right, exactly. On a good day, you'll get some follow-through. There's always a lot of questions about what constitutes volume and which volume should you watch. Well, obviously, you should know the average volume to have something to compare it to. So you'll and especially during the first 2 hours of the day, you just brought up a really good point. You should know what a busy day is and how to recognize what a busy day is. And sometimes
Right.
you can see that with really popular charts. You might not see that in ETFs as much because there is trading sufficient for it to be at least a decent candlestick. But even that, you can see the wixel over here on the 5 minute of the SPY.
Right, and that's why I think in our online trading room, we cautioned everybody to be very, very careful. Don't get whipped around in this market, because when you have low volume, you can have price movement that isn't real, true price movement.
Yep, exactly. And again, this is we're purposely calling this a stock trading recap and not a market recap. We're not doing, the Dow did this and the Dow did that. We're doing our best to discuss how you could have traded today and how to set up your trading tomorrow. But the point that you just made is extremely important, Marion, because if you don't recognize when the conditions are tougher or when there is less institutional activity, and without, obviously without getting into a whole big discussion on order flow at this particular moment, it's very, very difficult to get in and out of trades where you'd like to, because the volume is just not there to do that. You could justify, well, if I trade less shares, I'm not going to get hurt as much. But the bottom line is, it doesn't matter if you have 100 shares or a million. It's still a poor trading conditions, right? That less shares doesn't make it a better idea.
Right, why get hurt at all? Someone actually in our room asked me, is this there wasn't really, not really, because there was no order flow.
Correct. So I guess we'll just do like we do every day and briefly make sure everybody understands what day we're talking about. We are on Monday night, September 14th, coming back from the weekend. And I think this was kind of apropos. We bounced basically going up and down and ending up in the same place. So nothing going on. So this was the map of the S&P 500 closing last Friday, heading into the weekend. A few pockets of opportunity, and I guess if I zoom this out just a little bit on the chart, you can see why. You'll notice that a lot of them were large cap stocks. Again, the size of the box is the size of the market cap. So we had actually two closes that were bullish. I mean, when I say bullish, I mean they closed above the open. Friday was actually very constructive in the fact that it closed near the high, which kind of threw me off, because coming into the day, this big down candle on Wednesday, and we had a long discussion about that this morning, about whether or not it should have followed through. And then these 2 days kind of negated this. And today certainly didn't help at all to give us any clarity, because now we close in the middle of today, basically.
Right.
So that's the context for heading into today. This was the price action ending Friday afternoon, coming into today. So this is what you were looking at pre-market. We did expect at or near Friday's highs, and we had some pretty key numbers to look at, whether it was the moving average coming down or this number just, which I believe was 199.50. We were looking for some follow through today, provided we got volume. We didn't get it. So this is basically the morning call that we had today on the market. No general market bias, stock specific tape. And again, you can find this in a lot more detail on the blog every day. Just go to the homepage, take a look at it, just to give you a little context on the notes today. Still more short setups, but still not many longs. I think that was a key right there. Just because we had less obvious short sales, that doesn't mean necessarily that it makes it a good long. And that's why you have to have trades on both sides of the tape. Again, SPY closed on the highs, but it was neutral. And the 4 price point method essentially is basically saying it's a day trading environment. We're going to use those shorter time frame reference points. So here's essentially what we had. We had an inside day in the SPY on Friday, closed near the high. Hard to make a case to be a bull. Again, we had a 20-minute discussion about that this morning. And that was basically bouncing back and forth from the weekly chart to the daily chart and determining which one was more important right now, this longer term uptrend, which we determined was oversold in the short term, or just the last 3 weeks, and whether or not this consolidation is more important to set a trade expectation, or do you expect it to bounce based on this oversold condition? And really the answer is kind of a, I don't know if crappy is the right word, but it really depends on the time frame that you're trading. Because if you're only day trading, you're taking the most recent price action. But if you have a little bit longer time frame, I could definitely see how you could form a little bit of a bullish bias, looking for the oversold to work itself out. And as we went back and forth, just to give everybody some context, it wasn't in the meeting. Marion felt that this was oversold, looking for a bounce, and I kind of felt the short term is really got no bias whatsoever. That's essentially where we ended up, right in the middle of the day. So I don't think we resolved anything today, quite honestly. Hopefully we're going to get some more volume.
Didn't. I think it's still, we're in the same spot we were this morning.
Yep. But there were, like you said, there were a few good trades. So here's the SPY chart at the end of the day, which we're just looking at right now. So again, if you're looking at the tape for tomorrow, what do you see as far as an anticipation or expectation for follow through from the market? I almost think at this point, Marion, even though it's not a perfect pennant here, you have to be looking at it as if it starts wide, trades wide, and now we're coming back into this level. And very much like we saw in Amazon and a few of the other high cap stocks, which we'll take a look at today, you want to wait for them to tip their hand before you get involved. So actually, I'll pop up Amazon just to give everybody an idea what that trade scenario looks like. So had a big consolidation here. We finally broke out. Even though we closed on the lows, we still stayed out of that. And then the next 2 days, we kind of validated staying out of that. So that's what I feel like we're kind of waiting for in the market right now, is for us to break out of this consolidation, either up or down. I don't really have a strong opinion one way or the other, although a lot of the stocks that you would think should have bounced didn't bounce. And actually, I'll go to the Netflix here on the intraday. Really, inside day, can't get over 100. Expected to move lower. We got a couple of dollars, but this stock can move 9, which we saw last week. ATR is about 6.5. So what you calling Netflix right now, Mary? It's one of the darlings for everybody to trade. In trouble?
It is in trouble, and I'll tell you I think that our first clue was the day when it got great news that it was expanding into different other countries, and I think it were 5 different countries. That should have seen that stock $10 higher, and it couldn't.
If I'm not mistaken, that was Wednesday, the day we closed.
It got some. Yep. It got some momentum in the morning, and then it fell apart, and I think we had almost a 50% retracement.
Yeah, right back in the middle of the day, and then that got followed up by 2 inside days, which just made for massive indecision. Now, we talk about it every day. You have to have this stock on your watch, on your list every day, just because of the liquidity and just because of the fact that it can move. So if there's not a longer term trend, you should still be able to get some trades out of it. But this is just starting to consolidate to the point now where you're probably getting chopped around a little bit if you're actively trading it. Now, Apple and Facebook, a little bit better picture. Although it did finish clearly lower than the open today, it did hold the move higher, which I think is constructive.
I definitely agree with you. Holding any of that move higher. Actually, where did it end up closing? Is that about a 50% retracement?
Yep, I think we said that 115, if I'm not mistaken, was the 50%, but pretty close. Yep.
Yeah, so it did hold 50%. So I would say that's still, positive.
And then we have Facebook, which continues to flirt with the 50-period moving average. This is now this is the fifth time, if you go back over here, where it just can't seem to get over it. Classic technical analysis, knock 3 times, it usually goes through. Well, now we're knocking 5 times, and now 3 days in a row we closed above it. Not necessarily a trend day. This might just be a matter of the overall market getting a little steam behind it to push it. Now, the stock could normally move fine on its own, but for whatever reason, it's just not moving at all.
Yeah, I was actually surprised because it can play its own game. It doesn't care what the market's doing often, but
we got aggressive this morning too. We actually said if it catches a bid, it wouldn't be surprised if it hits the 95, 96 level. But you can see here basically a doji opening and closing at the same spot. I feel like we still have to game plan it long. I don't see any reason not to be long. Do you?
No, absolutely not. I think it's still a long.
Okay. Somebody just typed in, this is actually the 2 columns. This has changed from the previous close and changed from the open. So this will actually give you a heads up of which stocks are trading in sync with the longer term trends if you happen to put that up on your screen.
Yeah.
So we actually had a decent list of stuff to look at today. This was the end of day map. And again, you can see Apple sticking out, Facebook not red. But again, larger cap stocks are actually closing positive here, which I think is interesting. So this is stocks coming into today, and you're going to see we pull them up on the charts. And again, out of all the stocks on Wall Street, there really wasn't a giant list of longs today, but we did have this list here, which I thought was interesting. Above the 20-period moving average, up for the last 5 days, and 2% higher from the open. Again, they're not necessarily longs, but they are stocks that are starting to find some short-term buying. So it's really just a question of, are you dropping all the way down to these shorter time frames versus are you going to only trade the longer term time frames, stay on the sides and let that work itself out? Now, Starbucks, one of the top stocks that we were looking at coming into the day. And look, I've traded this stock, Starbucks, enough to know that it can be a little frustrating as day trade, and very rarely does it trade from low to high 3 days in a row. And we kind of called that right out of the gate this morning. It actually looked promising right out of the gate. Clearly above all the key moving averages, had some room to go, about $1.50 from the previous day's close, but sellers came right in and stock pretty much did what it normally does, which is not sustain 3 days in a row. Other than that, look, we've been looking at United Airlines, Under Armour. Look, it's what's your feeling on this now? It's almost 3 weeks of a trading range. I think it's still above all the moving averages, still pointing higher. Shocked that it hasn't made a run at the $100 level yet.
I still think it's a buy. I like that it's consolidating for a longer period. I think we can get a bigger move on it. The fact that it's still above the 20-day and that it's holding up here. Even when the market, look at some of those days, we had some nasty down days, and it hung in there. I still like it long.
And we also, obviously, we covered Apple already, and we continue to talk about the airlines versus oil going down. And JetBlue, again, it's not a lightning fast stock where you get really your blood pumping, but it has been a steady stock that's just continuing to climb higher. Same thing with BBY. Again, not monster average true range, but slow dollar, still a dollar, right?
That's right.
Some of the thinner stocks, and by thinner, meaning they average close to 1 million shares or maybe just a little bit below. INCY has been in the list for a while. This is the intraday chart here on the left. This is the daily. So you can see why it's actually in the daily chart. It's taken out all levels, all 52-week highs. Just a question of follow-through. Now, we had 2 good days here, Thursday and Friday, so consolidation day today. Not really that big of a deal. Looking for it to catch a bid again. It actually caught all the way back 50% into the range. So that's actually constructive.
I actually think that one needed to take a breath.
Well, pretty good move. I mean, from August 24th on that bottom, a $40 move higher. That's a pretty big move.
And you know what? At that point, you need, for the stock to keep going, you need to have some type of consolidation, some type of pullback.
Yep. We actually, speaking of that, we actually got that in BBY. We were looking for it to consolidate, push above 37, consolidate, and we got 4 days there, and now it's bouncing a little bit, and again, showing good relative strength compared to the market as well. So on the short side, again, not a lack of stuff to talk about on the short side. That's for sure. The one thing I think was really interesting, which kind of set the tone for the day, was the size of the list of stocks that were inside days. And believe me, this is actually sorted out to only have a certain amount of share, volume in there and average true range. So this list was actually much bigger. So on the short side, we're looking at G Pro, one of the better ones, but we also noticed a lot of accumulation in G Pro as far as volume starting to spike on the daily chart. So you can see it down here. We did push higher and end up holding the low. It's still a sell short. It's just, I kind of feel like it's a diminishing sell short now that we're actually, let me zoom out a little bit here, push through this 40 level. But then you look here, the last 2 weeks, volume is actually increasing. And again, we actually pointed that out this morning. The amount of dojis, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of the last 6 candles now are dojis. So we're getting a lot of indecision at these new lows. So technically, it's still a sell short, but that's a lot of indecision over a 5 to 7 day period. And I think that's it pretty much for today. I mean, we don't want to start to make up some trades just to have something to talk about on the trading recap. Not a lot changed from day to day. I think tomorrow going to probably have to wake up a little bit earlier to really find some stuff that has some room to go, because we could find stuff that's in uptrends or downtrends. Again, Wynn is a good example. It's just a question of how much more room to the downside do you believe it has before it has to consolidate again. 3 solid days to the downside after a really clean flag. So you got a flag, push down, and consolidation. This might need to go sideways for a couple of days. So we might end up seeing that sideways action into the FOMC. Obviously, we're hoping there's more to do tomorrow and Wednesday with the announcement coming out on Thursday. But again, I can't stress it enough. Be patient and only trade when there's something to do, because you don't want to be in a position where you're just making back money that you gave away because you were bored. You're trading for the month, you're trading for the quarter, you're trading for the year. You're not working a 9-to-5 job. If there's something to do, dig in there. Absolutely don't hesitate. If it's lighter volume, be okay with sitting on the side. Nothing wrong with doing that.
I absolutely agree. If we have a low volume day again tomorrow, just hold on, because I think the FOMC meeting and then Friday with the quad witching will give us some volatility.
Yep, exactly. Okay, everybody, have an awesome night. Marion, thank you. I will speak to you tomorrow.
Okay, good night, Pete.
Bye-bye.